Welcome back to Lord Gizmo. Today, you're going to watch one man turn this bare slab into a 170 square meter premium shed, almost all of it on his own. There is no second pair of hands anywhere on this job, which means every frame that goes up has to be right first time, because nobody is holding the other end. The steel arrives cut, punched and flat-packed, and the very first frame to stand up decides the line of every single one behind it. Getting it upright is the dangerous part. A 9-meter frame is a hinge until it is propped, and it wants to fold sideways the whole way up. By sunset on day 1, 3 portal frames are standing and secured, with the 4th already bolted together flat on the slab, waiting for the morning. The morning arrives in fog, and the frames go up one at a time, each one levered upright, propped, and then bolted down before the next begins. 48 bolts are hammer drilled into that slab before any steel stands, and what they resist is not weight pushing down, but wind trying to lift. Nine meters of clear floor works because each column and rafter is bolted rigid at the knee, turning every pair into one arch that carries load down its legs. But an arch under load tries to push its own feet apart, and nothing in the steel stops that. The concrete does. The slab is the 4th side of every frame. "18.75 meters of building, 6 frames, 5 bays. 4 of them will be closed in, and the one at the end is staying open on purpose." Look closely, and the middle columns are visibly fatter than the ones on the ends, 200 millimeters deep against 150. That is not a mistake. An end frame only catches half a bay of roof, because on one side there is no more building. Half the load, lighter steel. With all 6 standing, eave beams run the full length along the top of the columns, and 6 separate arches finally start behaving like one building. The back wall gets permanent steel cross-bracing. The front wall cannot have any because a window and 3 door openings leave nowhere to land a diagonal. So, ratchet straps hold that front wall plumb instead, tensioned webbing doing a structural job, and they will stay tied on for most of the build. "18 meters on from the first one, the last frame still sits dead on the line it's set, which is why the sheeting will go on without a fight. Roof purlins begin marching down the rafters, and on the ground the girts are measured, cut and drilled on trestles, one length at a time. Girts are the horizontal rails that lace the walls together, rolled into a Z so that 2 can overlap and share a bolt where they meet. Openings get framed as the steel goes in, because you cannot simply cut a hole later in a wall that is holding the building square. And several roof purlins are being deliberately left off, right over the middle of the shed. The reason for that will not be obvious for another 6 minutes. "3 days in, the frame is finished and ready to sheet. Not one panel is on it yet, and above head height, there is still nothing but sky. The first thing on the steel is not the wall. It is a blanket, 8 millimeters thick, and it goes between every girt and every sheet that follows. Steel carries heat the way copper carries current, so cladding screwed straight onto a frame would pipe the Australian sun through the wall all afternoon. That thin break stops the two touching, so the only metal still bridging the whole wall is the few millimeters of shank on each screw. Then the color goes on. 25 sheets of woodland grey on the back wall alone, every one of them 3.6 meters long, matching the eave. A sheet that size weighs about 10 kilos and presents 3 square meters to the wind. On a ladder alone, a gust turns it into a sail. Day 5 is the front wall, insulated end to end, and the strips above the roller doors come down to 600 millimeters to suit the openings. Nothing on a shed is a round number by accident. The eave sits at 3.6 meters, the doors at 3, so 600 is simply what is left over. From the air, the footprint is enormous, and the whole of it is still open to the sky, with the slab underneath collecting every shower that passes. The second end wall gets the same treatment, blanket first, then grey, working from one corner across and shuffling the ladder along the whole way. Sheet by sheet, the frame disappears, and the building stops looking like a drawing of a shed and starts looking like a shed. Then something different goes up inside. An internal wall, framed across the middle of the building, dividing the enclosed bays from the open one. And there, directly above it, is the gap. The roof purlins that were left off run straight through where this wall wants to be. Both cannot go first. Somewhere under all this grey steel sits a bill for the slab, the kit, and the labour, and the 3 numbers sit further apart than anyone expects. The wall gets sheeted from the slab upward, each row lapped over the last, climbing toward an apex 4.5 meters above the floor. Nine meters wide and raked to a point, a gable means every sheet is a different length with an angled cut, so there is no rhythm to settle into. And here is the answer. The wall sheets run all the way up through the roof plane, uninterrupted, because there is no purlin in the way to notch around. Only now do those purlins go back, threaded through a single slot cut in the finished sheeting. One clean cut each, instead of a shaped notch on every panel. A week into the build, every wall is standing, insulated and closed, and the only thing still missing is the part that matters most on a shed like this. Wire is strained tight across the whole roof first, a grid of thin steel lines running from one side of the building to the other. It is there to hold the insulation up. A blanket that sags between the rails gets squashed against the sheet and loses the trapped air doing the actual work. Then the anti-con goes on. Glass wool bonded to a foil skin, rolled out over the wire with the foil facing down, becoming the ceiling you see from inside. Without it, warm air meets cold steel on the underside of that roof, condensation forms, and it rains back down on everything stored below. Roof sheets follow straight over the top, screwed off row by row, and the narrow strip above the open bay comes down to 310 millimeters. By the end of the 8th day, roughly half the roof is laid, and from above you can see exactly where he stopped, bare purlins running to the far end. Then the last sheet drops into place, and for the first time since the concrete was poured, that slab is under cover. Barge cappings and flashings close the edges, because a roof is only as good as the seams nobody thinks about until water finds them. On the trestles, a square line gutter is assembled in one long run, then lifted up and fixed along the eave in a single length. Three 90mm downpipes take the water away, which on a roof this size is a serious volume every time it rains properly. Three roller doors are wheeled in, 3 meters wide and 3 meters tall, and every one of them is missing something most sheds this size have fitted. They go up one at a time, and a 3x3 opening is wide enough to reverse a loaded trailer through without folding a mirror. The window is cut straight through the wall, girts and all, which means the steel it interrupted has to be given somewhere else to go. So it is reframed and reconnected around the opening, and the wall ends up as solid as it was before anyone put a grinder near it. A personal access door goes into the internal wall, framed in lighter steel, so the enclosed side can be reached from the open bay without lifting a roller. And there are no motors on any of the 3 doors. That is the client's choice rather than a saving, so all three get opened by hand. Those ratchet straps have been holding the front wall plumb since the second day. The sheeting and the doors do that job now, and the webbing finally comes off. The open bay is deliberate. Covered parking and drive-through access without 1 extra square meter of enclosed floor to insulate, seal, or pay for. Under its roof, the anti-con runs right through, and up in the corner you can see the strapping that braces this end bay in the roof plane. The slab steps down 50 millimeters here, right where the internal wall lands, and that step is what separates the sealed half from the open one. Along the base of every enclosed wall runs a molded strip, filling the gap under each corrugation one by one. It is the difference between a sealed building and one that rats, snakes, dust, and wind-driven rain simply walk into underneath the sheets. Now the number. The concrete came first. 150 millimeter slab upgraded from the standard 100, plus site works, at about 23,000 Australian dollars. The kit itself, every column, girt, purlin, sheet and screw delivered flat-packed on one truck, is the biggest line at roughly 33,000. Which leaves the labor. 8 days of one man's work comes to about 11,000. And it is comfortably the cheapest part of the whole job. Around $65,000 all up, 170 square meters, insulated and sealed for roughly a tenth of what a house costs per square meter. Well done to Australian Shed Builds. Their channel is linked in the description box. Give this a like and subscribe to Lord Gizmo for more builds just like this.